We are talking all about user acquisition for digital agencies, how to find new clients. Okay, cool. So Vishal says, I do see a notification that the session is being recorded, which is great. So yes, I'm sure everyone will have access to a recording afterwards. So let's get straight into today's webinar topic to make sure that we get into depth with what we want to cover. So we're going to be talking about 3 core areas that will help you with client acquisition for your agencies: how to identify the right and wrong clients for your agency, how to build your agency's positioning and get clients coming to you, and then the simple lead generation tactic that's helped me grow the HeyDigital agency 3 times in the last 12 months. And we'll get to a bit more context on that in a second, and then we will do Q&A. So I want to encourage all of you to get your questions as you have them, drop them in the chat. I actually like to keep webinars very kind of fluid, I guess is a good term. So I would love to find out from those of you who are here live right now, let me know in the chat box what kind of agency you run. Or if you're thinking about starting an agency, I would love to know what kind of mixture of agency owners or people we have on today's session. I know many people will be watching a replay of this at a later date as well. So it'd be really great to hear a bit more from all of you. So I'll give some context about me, why I'm leading this session today. This webinar is put on by PromoRepublic, but they're being very kind in trusting me to lead this for all of you. So I don't work for PromoRepublic. I myself am an agency founder, just like many of you. So I run an agency called HeyDigital. You can check us out. Just heydigital.co is our website. I put a link here, but I realized it's probably not best to just like start screen sharing and jump back to presentations and stuff like that. But we are a paid media agency. We focus purely on paid advertising campaigns and creative that goes alongside those campaigns. So landing pages, amazing video ads, static ads, GIF ads, all that great stuff. So we're a paid media agency and CRO agency that works only with B2B SaaS companies. So we have a very specific niche that we own. Now, officially, this agency has been running for about 3 years. The first year was myself, solo operator, really just contracting, freelancing, trying to figure out exactly what my offering was, what the best structure was, etc. And then over the last 2 years, we've become the agency that we are today. And really over the last 9 months have things start to kick off for us. So we work with 16 SaaS clients right now. All of them, well, the majority of them are very well-funded SaaS companies. We work with clients that if any of you are in the B2B or SaaS world will know. So Hotjar, for example, Stream, their website is getstream.io, Userleap. Like our clients have raised tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. So we work for a very specific subset of clients. And my agency itself, right now, we're a team of 12 people full-time, including myself and my co-founder, and then 4 to 5 part-time contractors that we work with as well. And just 9 months ago, there was only 3 of us. So we've grown quite a lot in the last 9 months. And from a revenue perspective, last year we tripled the revenue that we did the year previous, and our goal is to do more than that this year as well. And we'll be a multi-million euro agency this year. So that's a little bit of context to kind of me, my agency. I've done a ton of other stuff too. Like I have a podcast that I run, which we'll talk about later on. I do webinars like this very often, all kinds of stuff like that. I really focus on building my brand and my team's brand. So, but for the purpose of this, I think that's enough information. Great to see some of you in the comments. I see my friend Ishan here, which is awesome. Good to see you here, sir. I see, so Candy says that she runs a social media marketing and web design agency. I see Andre who says growth-driven design marketing agency. We achieved great results with our first client, now struggling to get more clients. Okay, hopefully this session will help you today, Andre. I see Donnie that says I'm starting a web design agency. Vishal says business and marketing automation. Kim, solo agency. So we do have a variety of people here, which is really, really great. So we're going to cover 3 core areas today. The first one is how to identify the right and wrong clients for your agency. And the reason that I put this first is that I'll be completely honest, we made, I probably not allowed to like swear on these webinars because they're not mine entirely. So I'll be very careful there. But we made a lot of mistakes when first starting, when it was just me, solo operator, because it was that early stage. And I wanted to work with anyone that showed an interest in working with us that I thought matched our persona, right? But over the last 3 years of working with a number of different clients, companies, people, I've really started to get to grips with how important the right client is or the wrong client is, and how much of an impact that can have on your business, not just from a revenue perspective, but from your own personal quality of life, from the quality of the environment for your team. If you're working with a load of clients and your team hates working with them, you're going to build such a toxic environment. One thing that's super important to me is building a team that are so passionate about what they do, that love to show up to work every day. Like, I think you could ask anyone on my team right now, go find them on LinkedIn, send them a message. I guarantee you all of them would say that like they really love working with HeyDigital. And so that also stems from choosing the right or the wrong clients. And I'm going to talk about some of the signals or things to look out for in a second. But this is why this comes first. Before talking about lead generation strategies or building authority or anything else, I want you to just think a little bit about questioning what a good client for you looks like. And of course, and my friend Ishan, who's here watching, like we've talked about this together a lot, and like this is something that you're going to learn over time. Like, we didn't always choose the right client from the beginning, and we still make mistakes now, because when you're first signing a client, right, everyone kind of puts their best side on show throughout that process, and sometimes you make mistakes, so that's totally fine. But I want this to be, if I was to share one of my learnings so far over the last 2.5, 3 years, it would be that honestly, the clients that you work with and working with the right ones for you and for your team is probably the biggest catalyst or biggest area to really focus on to get your growth machine working. Because if you have a load of the wrong clients, it's going to make growing and scaling and building your business and your team very, very challenging. So let's talk about some things to look out for. Signs of good and bad clients. Now, it was pretty hard for me to like really group this together, but I want to give you some things that I've experienced, and let me know in the chat if any of you feel this way too. These are some of the signals. So I call them, in my mind, red flags. We have like, okay, what are red flags for us when we're in sales conversations with potential new clients? Okay. And what are green checks? I've never called them that before. That maybe that's a new term I can just use right now. So red flags, green checks. And so some red flags that are very, very common is if someone comes to you and they're coming to you because, hey, Dylan, we've tried 20 different agencies. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but if they say, hey, Dylan, we've tried 4 or 5 different agencies, haven't been able to make things work at all up until this point. Now, some of you might think, okay, great, that means these other agencies have done a really bad job. This is our opportunity. And in some cases, rarely, but in some cases, that is the truth. Like, there are a lot of bad agencies out there too, or people that make mistakes. We've made mistakes in the past as well, right? But if a potential client has burnt through multiple agencies, that's often a sign that they may be very challenging or very difficult to work with. Now, I'm not saying turn away anyone that's worked with agencies. Like, and most of our clients come to us having worked with at least one agency, maybe one agency in the past, or they're just trying to start things themselves. But if someone comes to me and they've worked with 3, 4, 5 agencies, immediately I have to dig deeper in my discovery and find out what happened there. So what are some of the things that you do want to look for? Now, I know some of these do's and don'ts, you won't understand these until you're into the client relationship. And that's another point that I want to bring up is I don't want to give you core advice and say, hey, you should do this, you shouldn't do this, because everyone has their own experience. But one thing that's been very, very, very important to me and my team is whenever we notice one of our clients isn't aligned with our values and we're having issues in the relationship, we operate where we'll try and fix them if it's a problem where we haven't performed as we would like, or if there's clear issues on both sides to work through, we'll try and fix them in one opportunity. But if they still don't get fixed, or if more often it's just very, very clear, hey, look, this client, they are not respecting time or boundaries, they're always trying to call the shots, they're not letting us do our work, we will fire clients. So I don't like to do this, and I don't want to do it very often. But over the last 3 years, I would say we have fired probably 3 to 5 clients. We actually just let go of one client last month. And the reason behind that is that the energy that you waste on clients that aren't right for you prevents you from moving forward in other areas. It burns your team out. They don't enjoy working with that client. You don't do the best work. You spend so many more hours trying to fix this relationship, and that's time that could be spent elsewhere. So this is something that, to me personally, as a piece of advice I would give to everyone, is like, as soon as you notice bad clients and ones that just don't align with your values, really consider letting them go. I know it might seem scary, letting a big retainer leave you, but you can replace that very, very easily in this world. So that's a few areas here. Now, signs of a good agency client. This is one thing that I've really doubled down on over the last 6 months, 9 months, is have you had success with similar clients before? And I don't just mean similar products or companies. I mean the kind of person that you're talking to and working with, the team structure that they have. For us, it's a little bit easier because we're a very niche focused agency, right? But even within our niche, B2B SaaS companies, there are some types of SaaS companies that I know we just can't do a good job for. Or not can't, that's the wrong word to use, but rarely do a good job for. And I would rather double down on the clients I've had great success with. So for me, what does that look like right now, this very moment today, is SaaS companies who have their content marketing working. They have a small marketing team. They've raised a Series A round, maybe a Series B round. They have pretty significant budgets to spend on paid ads, like ideally minimum $40,000, $50,000 a month and significantly higher. Like if someone comes to me at that kind of level, and I look at their analytics and their analytics setup is good, it's working well. They have people on their team that we can work with and collaborate with. They've worked with maybe an agency or two in other areas of their business and it's driven good results for them. Like these are signs to me of, okay, these are the kind of clients that we typically work very well with. So these are just a few ideas to get all of your minds like thinking and taking over. But please let me know if this is making sense to everyone. I think it will, because it's pretty straightforward. But this is something that I think in the agency space, people don't spend enough time talking about. Not just signs of good and bad clients from like a purely service-driven perspective, but there are so many other things to consider when working with clients. Like, what's the person like to communicate with? Do they, for example, us at our agency, we use Loom videos a lot for our clients. Like we have a shared Slack channel with all of our clients where once a week we share with them a weekly update. We use that Slack channel for any other questions or core updates. And then we do 2 phone calls a month with them. If I'm talking with a potential client and they've never used Loom videos to communicate before and it feels really weird for them to do that and they don't like recording videos, I know it maybe seems a bit crazy, but that's actually a red flag for me now as like, hey, it's going to be challenging for us to communicate. If they're the kind of person that uses email all the time for all communication and writes really long emails, that's not going to work out too well for us, and we'll have to train them into different ways of communication. So it's small things like that that over time can make up a big difference. Now, I'm going to continue moving on because we have a lot of content to run through, and we only have another like 15 minutes or so and then a Q&A, and I want this webinar to be actionable. I don't just want to spend a load of time on fluff. But I see Tom Walker saying, yes, that makes sense. So that's really great to hear. Thank you, Tom. Now, we have 2 more sections. So how to build your agency's positioning, and then the simple lead generation tactic nobody is talking about. Now, I know 95% of you are here for this last point. So this second point, how to build your agency's positioning, I literally have one very simple slide, but we'll run over into the next point too, because it all ties into each other. One thing that I am very big on, if you haven't noticed already, is positioning, branding, authority, and really defining who you are and what you do. And so that's why I recommend to every agency owner or person thinking about starting an agency to start with a niche. Now, that niche doesn't necessarily have to be a specific company type that you work with. It could be that your niche is you're an SEO agency and you just do SEO, or you're like in our case, we're a paid ads agency for SaaS companies, and I can get even deeper on that with you. Now, this advice isn't anything new. All of you thinking about starting agencies will probably have considered niching rather than just going like completely broad. But I want to share some ideas with you about why I think defining a niche is super important. I don't necessarily think it's the only way to do things. There are many full service agencies out there and it works very well for them. But at the stage that most of you are at right now, if you're watching this webinar, starting with a niche will really help you out, because once you have a niche, and like Ishan says in the comments right now, you can always pivot later. That's one really good thing to consider. You can always pivot. It's not forever. But in my case, I picked SaaS, right? Like at first, before I got to our ICP or ideal customer persona right now, I picked SaaS, and I knew I was going to do marketing for SaaS companies. And the reason was I'd worked for 3 different SaaS companies, had some good results for them, knew the industry, knew that there was need out there. And we can talk another time on another webinar about doing niche research. But I knew that I was going to go down that route. So the day I launched my agency, I had my messaging, I had my positioning. Of course, it's iterated a lot over time and continues to improve. And like, we need to improve things. For example, my team has grown from 3 people to 11 people in the last 6 months. Our website still only shows 3 people, right? There are like things that we need to improve and change on a messaging side of things. But from day one, I've had, okay, I'm working with SaaS companies, we're doing paid ads or we're doing marketing for them. So everything that I do on social media or anywhere else is so clear who we service and what we're trying to achieve, that it's made my job as a CEO and a founder so much easier. If I was just a marketing agency, like, think of all the different wasted conversations we would have, or other stuff that would go on. Like, finding a niche or starting with a niche can really help you speed up the path to revenue, in my opinion, or the path to growth. I know there was a couple of you on here who said you have like 1 or 2 clients right now, you want to bring on more. It's so much easier to bring on more if it's very clear who it is you want to work with and who you service. And then some of the other benefits of being niche focused is like, you can build out replicable systems inside your organization, inside your agency. Like, we manage 15 to 16 SaaS companies' accounts right now. And they pay us pretty decent sized retainers to do that. And I'm in a position where many VPs of marketing or CMOs at SaaS companies are a little bit jealous of me, because I get to look at what 15, 16, 17 of the top SaaS companies in the world are doing right now, not just in their paid ads, but across all of their marketing, because I talk to their marketers, right? And so we take learnings from all of our different clients and distribute them across and run experiments based on what our other clients are seeing working for them. And this is a big value add that you can bring to your clients as well. So starting with a niche, picking a niche, identifying something like that, I think is super important and will help you. And that's going to tie into my point around this lead generation tactic nobody is talking about. Now, before we get into this, drop me a message in the chat if you are struggling right now with lead generation. Like, is lead generation, say yes in the chat if lead generation is something that's a problem for you, or if it's something that is stopping you progressing and moving forward, or if it's something that you need to improve. Drop me a yes so I can see how many people are feeling that way. Okay, cool. So I see Andre, Shivanji, Donnie, Shalendra. Okay, so I know that lead generation is a struggle. Now, I don't say this, like, my agency is still small, right? Like, I won't share exact numbers, but we will turn over €1 million this year in 2021. And I haven't had to do any lead generation. Like, I don't do cold emails, I don't do calls, I don't do meetings. All of our clients so far have come to us. Like, they've approached us. Nothing has come from outbound. I think maybe when I very first started, I tried one outbound email campaign. I hired someone and it brought us 1 client, and it was like it wasn't a good idea. The client churned very quickly. But aside from that, everything has been people coming to us. So I'm very fortunate. And right now we're hiring for more people on our team because we have too many leads coming to us. Like, I can't service all of them. We're very picky about the clients that we take on board, and in line with good client, bad client. Like, we turn away probably 75% of the people that apply to work with us, or the people that request a proposal through our website, right? And so I'm just saying that to frame like some of the activities that I have done up until this point, and how that can help some of you. And so there are so many different ways you can look at lead generation. There are so many different tests or experiments I could recommend to all of you. But I wanted to come here today and share one thing that I truly believe has helped us triple the size of our business in the last 12 months and is the biggest factor in the growth of our business right now, aside from the great work that we're doing and the great team that we're building, of course. And so that is this right here. In March of 2020, so what, not really not that long ago, March of 2020, I launched a podcast, which is called the SaaS Marketing Show. And this is the page on our agency website about the SaaS Marketing Show. And this podcast has been the single best decision I've made since starting my business. And I'm going to tell you why. There are multiple reasons why. And hang in there with me, because some of you will think, okay, podcast, how is that going to help me with client acquisition? What does that look like? How do you do it? There are two core areas how this helps with client acquisition, and then one other added benefit that's come with this podcast. And so to begin with, you'll see on this slide, I share what our guest criteria is. And that's because anybody that we interview on the podcast matches our ideal target customer persona. I only interview people on the show if I know their SaaS company revenue is over $1 million annual recurring. Now, to be honest with you, that's actually changed recently. Like, I don't want anyone coming on the show unless they're at $5 to $10 million in annual recurring revenue. So we only interview people at companies of that size. And we only interview senior marketers, very rarely, but sometimes we do interview the CEO or founder, but normally senior marketer. And that to me is a CMO or a VP or a head of marketing. And if you think about it, those are the people that we sell to at HeyDigital. Those are the people that make decisions about working with us. So that's one thing to think about. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple slides time. So yeah, what are the benefits of podcasting, you might ask, aside from client acquisition? And these do all tie into client acquisition. But the first one is just like brand. So since launch, over 40,000 people have downloaded the SaaS Marketing Show or listened to the SaaS Marketing Show. And I think there's been over like 3,000 hours of watch time on YouTube videos, and some other metrics as well that I can't share right now. But like, we get a lot of people watching and listening to the show. On average, every episode gets downloaded between 1,000 to 2,000 times. And what that means is that we start building our brand as an agency. With that, we don't even talk about HeyDigital in the podcast. Like, people just know that I'm the co-founder of HeyDigital. I run the podcast. You'll see by HeyDigital in the cover art, and you'll see on our website the podcast thing. And so one benefit of this is building brand. Like, if you take a look at these screenshots, these are people reviewing the podcast or people adding comments to things on LinkedIn or sending me messages. So it's been very good actually for attracting new audiences. One great thing to share here that isn't necessarily client acquisition focused, but maybe episode 7, 8 or so, we interviewed someone at a SaaS company in India called ChargeBee. His name is Sri Mithran. He leads the acquisition team at ChargeBee. We interviewed him and he shared that interview. And for some reason, that interview was shared in multiple SaaS communities in India. And since then, I've built out such a strong network in the Indian SaaS community. More than half of my team right now are from India. Or not more than half, but I have 3 full-time members and 3 part-time team members from India. I have worked with a number of and had discussions with a number of Indian companies. And like, my hiring pipeline right now is full of amazing SaaS marketers in India. Like, I'm literally some of the most talented people I've ever met. And I've built great relationships with people in India too, like Isham, for example. And I genuinely put 75% of that down to the podcast and that interview that I first did with Sri at ChargeBee. I go and look at the podcast analytics now. India is our second most listened country and nation. So this is one added benefit outside of client acquisition. And you'll see that some of these people leaving comments and reviews, there's a CMO here, marketing specialist, CMO, CEO, tech founder. Like, some of these people, they may not fit our target persona today, but they will do in 6 months, 12 months time. So this is one huge benefit. Now, the second huge benefit is content creation. As an agency, we don't really invest too much in content. I would love to invest more in content, but I can't do that right now purely because if I do more content, I get more leads and I can't service more leads. So I need to hire more people in my team, which is why we're hiring aggressively. But as soon as I can take on more clients, we'll be turning on our marketing flows even more, and I'll have too many clients to deal with. And all that we do is a podcast. And so we take the podcast, we live stream the podcast. This is two examples of me live streaming the podcast at the time of recording on LinkedIn. We live stream the podcast, we create clips from the podcast, and we share those clips across LinkedIn and other social media channels. You'll see that these view numbers don't matter too much, but you'll see that these are being viewed by people in our space, like good number of comments, engagements, whatever. But we use this as our content marketing flow. We don't do anything else. We just do a podcast, that's it. So this helps us churn out more content. The more content we post, the more clients we attract. Clients come to us. We want inbound clients. It's the best way of doing things. And then the third play is like we get some awesome people on our podcast, and we get other people sharing our podcast. Like this is with Tim Solo. I think his title's changed, but when I interviewed him, he was the CMO at Ahrefs or Ahrefs. And this is then a senior marketer at another SaaS company sharing the interview, marketing consultant sharing, head of growth sharing. Like they enjoy coming on the show and they share it to their audiences as well. And this is so great for brand building. And so this is a snippet of my personal LinkedIn. I don't post on there too much right now, but I get an average of 250, 300 profile visits a week. I've now crossed 14,000 followers. This data is from March to June last year, so it's a little bit old, but I average around 100,000 views on my content every single month. And like, it's just from podcasts. And those are vanity metrics, you may think, but when you take a look at who's viewing this content, who's viewing this podcast content, look at the list of companies, right? HubSpot, Freshworks, Reply, Supermetrics, Restream, SalesWell, Metadata, Smart, Oracle. For me, these are all ideal clients. And actually one of these, Smart, they became one of our clients. And so this is a very straightforward way to be attracting more of the right people to come and to work with you. And so pretty much every single sales call we have at HeyDigital, our prospects mention the podcast. It's very hard to track like where people are coming from, right? But pretty much every sales call we have, our podcasts, our prospects mention the podcasts. And on top of all of that, like most of our leads are coming from people that see the podcast, hear about the podcast, someone tells them about the podcast, or they just find our agency and then they find our podcast. But we've also turned a number of guests that came on the show into clients. And that was always the intention, but I don't approach it from a sales perspective by any means. Like we interview them, we have a good time, we get to know each other, we stay in touch, we follow up, like not sales follow-ups, but we're there for them. I introduce my guests to each other to help each other out. And then when the time is right, when these people need a paid ads agency, they come to me because they've built a relationship with me over half an hour. They've got personal with me. We're friends. They know that I'm a SaaS focused agency. They know I know my stuff about SaaS marketing because we talk about it on the podcast. And so we've turned a number of our clients or a number of our guests into clients. One example is a company called Smart, who I shared earlier. They're from invite to come on the show to closing the client, I think it was like less than 30 days. And so the podcast itself has been worth, like, now I can genuinely say the podcast has generated us hundreds of thousands of euros in revenue. And it's very, very straightforward to operate and to run. And as well as that, another added bonus, this won't happen for everybody, but because I've owned this niche, I've built a niche focus. We've had sponsorships for our show, which is extra revenue stream for our business. We've had one sponsor called Restream for since the beginning of the podcast, so over a year. And then we've had multiple other sponsors as well. So we've generated in the mid tens of thousands of dollars or euros in revenue and podcast sponsors as well. So I get paid to do the podcast. I get paid to do the podcast and it generates me clients and it's fun and I learn. So I don't want to force everyone to do a podcast, but my criteria today was to share with you all one strategy that's working really well for me and my team. And it all, as Ishan said, it all ties super closely back into having a focus. You can call it niching down, whatever you want, but for me, it's having a very strong focus. Right now, no one can knock me off of that focus. And that's why we're building the way that we are and people are enjoying working with us, etc.